If you're enjoying the Video Jungle podcast, we encourage you to go to Apple Podcasts or Stitcher or any of those other fancy podcast sites. Give us a 5-star rating, leave a review, and I would challenge you to listen to the Video Jungle podcast and then listen to the Conan Bryan Needs a Friend podcast right after that. And we bring it on
Conan,
home.
if you're looking for an opening act for your podcast, which is a hysterical idea, you should see the comedy in that. Do a little 2-for-1 special.
Get your giggles out.
Yeah, listen to our podcast and then listen to one of those super popular podcasts. And I think you'll find ours are more tolerable.
The Video Jungle podcast proudly presents Lions Gotta Eat.
Welcome to the Video Jungle podcast. I am Arty Gold. This is Justin Andrews.
And I am going by Justin Polar, Seltzer, Beverage, Andrews.
Oh, let's get the ad right out of the way today. That's great. That
Knock
we
it out.
wait to the end. Knock it right out. You know, it's funny because we're trying to have these kind of conversations where we're kind of talking about our industry, how, you know, this COVID-19 is affecting everything. And that, like, one of the things we've done for clients forever is tell their story. And we've always had the battle of how do we tell their story the way we think we should tell it versus how a company thinks they should tell their story. And I think a lot of companies are, you know, we get into that battle of who should we interview, who's telling the story, what are they actually saying? And I think a lot of companies, we joke around a lot that we talk about like it's their culture videos are culture. And they want to say like, we have a good culture and come work for us. And this is the kind of company you're going to be working for. And this is what we do out in the community. But I think it can be something more than that. I think we've always preached that. And I think that you have a good take on how companies should approach that type of storytelling.
Maybe it's a good take.
I think it's a good take.
No, it's just this idea of show, don't tell, which if you're in marketing, maybe you've heard that before. But as a brand, you should be thinking, how do we take words that anybody can say? Words like we're innovative, we're passionate, we care about our customers, we do this. How do we take those words that anybody can say and turn them into visuals that only you can really pull off? And it is the combination of the two. But if you're saying that you care deeply about customers and have the best customer service, it only goes so far to say that. And it only goes so far to even do like a white paper on it. So how can you show that in a way that no one else could?
And the customer service is a good point, because if we sit down with any client and we say, hey, what's your differentiator? What's the top 3 things that makes you different? Almost every single client from the time I started doing this till now will always say it's our customer service. It's our people, right? That's the number one thing. It's like, so you have good customer service, but the other guy has good customer service. So
yeah, they're saying that too.
It's like, so you all have good customer service. How do we show
compare that to a brand like Zappos, who, if you're interested at all in the world of business, you know Zappos and you know them for their customer service. And it's not because they say, we have the best customer service. That's not why you know Zappos for customer service. You know them for customer service because the stories of their team delivering unparalleled customer service are memorable and they stick and they vividly show their level of customer service. So examples of like Zappos employees, you know, hand delivering shoes to customers to make sure they get like their shoes for their suit on their wedding day in time. It's the stories that stick because they're memorable, they're differentiated, they're unique, as opposed to saying we have amazing customer service. Even if you came up with a quirky branded word around your customer service.
I saw it the other day. There's a truck that drives by. They're actually in the insect and pet removal service in Rhode Island. That's where we're from. And their truck said, we have iconic service. Ooh. And I thought that was pretty good, because it's like, I thought about it and I was like, that's better than saying we have the best customer service, right? There's like, we have iconic service. And the first thing that went through my mind was like, I kind of want to call him to see like, what's iconic about this? This is great. And I like that kind of approach. It's kind of what we do and how we came up with Find Your Fascinating, right? Like, we're in the pre-creative game. We love coming up with ideas. We love coming up with the concepts and what makes a production / video tick. Getting to the Find Your Fascinating was just a lot better for us, just as opposed to just saying like, hey, have a pre-creative meeting. And it's been effective. I think for me, what we're talking about, where it really came into fruition, and as a good example of what's happening, is when this COVID-19 thing happened and every company in the world produced a COVID-19 video that literally had the same music and said this: we're all in this together. We're here for you. Nobody was really creative with like what that meant. And then that saying just kind of like lost its texture, right? It kind of lost its flavor because everybody was saying it, and it almost became a mockery to the point where everybody's like, we want to do this spot, but we can't say that because everybody's saying that. Companies started to realize, like, wait, we're all saying the same thing all at once, all together, nationally.
Right.
It's not effective.
So there's sort of two things that we're saying. One is, if you're going to use a typical standard buzzword, at least add some flair to it. But then sit down and brainstorm and do like a mind map to say, like, the iconic culture example. What is that? How do we show it? Like,
Right.
What does it actually feel like? And then ratchet that one step forward. So the COVID thing that you just mentioned, like, I think it's a great time to actually, if you're saying customer service is our thing, we're best at it, we have iconic customer service, screen record Zoom calls with customers as examples of, this is what our customer service literally looks like in action. And this is what we mean when we're saying iconic service, so that you're vividly showing it in action. And that's the webcam approach. Now, the one step up when we can actually film again is grassroots showing customer service, right? You film a customer service rep who is making their morning coffee, doing their own thing in their personal life, gets an emergency call and handles it.
I've always attacked that with, I love starting all those conversations with benefit first, right? So when we're sitting in front of a client, we're developing a new video, I try to get them off the idea of, okay, what makes your customer service so great? I try to go back into the customer's eyes and say, okay, what's the benefit to the customer, right? Because what you just said about, let's say you have a client that their service is going to free up your time. That's basically what they're telling you they're going to do. But the benefit to the client is what you just said, is I get to spend more time at my son's or my daughter's soccer game. I get to relax with my wife and watch a movie because your service allowed me to have more time. And I think getting to what your point is like, what's the visual to that? Now I have a nice story in front of me, right? Now I have a visual of somebody enjoying something, as opposed to, how do I tell somebody, or how do I just show somebody working at a computer? Like, because my benefit is I'm going to do the work for you. So one of the things that we talk about, I talk about it all the time in nauseum, so people are sick of it around here, but I call it real people, real stories. I believe in the real people angle. I believe in real stories. I think that is the most effective way to engage yourself and embrace yourself to clients. I think that it's effective. Some of it's personal. I enjoy watching a real story versus sometimes even just a scripted story, even if it's well done. I understand what the script is trying to say. I understand what the spots are trying to do, but there's just something about like real people and real stories that really just, I just embrace that type of storytelling. And I think that kind of fits into what you're saying, because I think at the heart of all of this, finding the right words, using the right words, you want to use words that real people are using, right? You want to use words and you want to get into the minds of how people are really thinking out there. And I think that's a whole nother approach too. It's like not just assuming like, well, this is going to work because this company did it and this is the catchphrase, but what are the real people using right now? And
I think a good example of it is the Airwalk brand was popular in the 90s, and what they were doing was like hanging around with skateboarders and trying to really understand that culture and brainstorming like literally at skate parks with these skateboarders to come up with shoes that they'd actually want. And when they stopped doing that and they eliminated that, and as they got a little bit bigger, for whatever reason, they said like, we're not going to do that anymore. They started just producing content that they thought, or shoes that they thought were good. And they very quickly ended up only being sold at like Payless. So really diminished the value of their brand by not paying attention. And I think that applies to like every brand. It's like real people, real stories is having your feet on the street, not forcing narratives, but searching for the ones that, again, epitomize those words that you're claiming. Now, you could script things and do interesting content, but definitely filming fake testimonials and stuff like that is just not a great way to vividly describe yourself.
Yeah. And as an example, you're working on a passion project right now for a hat company that produces hats for running. And I'm not a huge runner. I like sprinting and I like when my car starts. So if I have to run a long distance, it's probably an emergency. However, when you took on the project and then you showed me the footage and we did some promos and you're working on, what this story is going to be, I will tell you that you captured, there's a running team you captured, and man, it did get you pumped up. You could see the passion in their eyes when they're running. You see the teamwork, you see the camaraderie. There's just something about like what you captured in these real moments and these real people using the product, and you didn't even like hawk the product too much. It was just about this running team. And I think that's the kind of thing that gets me engaged. And I think companies can embrace that kind of passion, right? Like what makes that company tick, what's passionate about that company. And when you're doing that piece, Justin, I know you focused on the hat and why they're wearing it, but like, did you just let them like run? Were you trying to connect with the hat with the running, or what was the focus on that for you?
It's about what the brand represents, right? They're not Nike, they're not Adidas, they're not Reebok, they're their own brand. So you have to do something that is in the vein of where they're at, but describe their story and show it in context that makes sense. So someone who wasn't an elite runner and someone that represented like community and fun and togetherness, because that's sort of what we saw in the brand. And colorful. The brand was very colorful. So kind of looking for things that in a story that epitomizes that and can be a little bit quirkier to kind of just show what their brand represents, as opposed to them trying to say, we are for these types of people, showing that they are for those types of people.
I think we're having this conversation because I actually believe, like, especially who knows when we're going to come out with a vaccine, or where this, you just said, like, when production is going to go back to where it was supposed to be. I think we have to take a deep dive and really think about like how we're messaging, what images we're going to be using. And because I've seen this probably in the last 3 months more than anything. We talked about it earlier in the podcast. Everybody is using Zoom right now. Everybody is using Skype. Everybody is using WebEx, and we're all on video now. And we're just used to it. So now we have to be even better at it, because the messages is going to get lost. I was on a Zoom meeting with like 40 people the other day, and it was like watching Hollywood Squares on steroids. Now we're talking about how do you get through that clutter. And think about how many sets of eyes are going to be on computers in the next 3 months. So I think what you're saying is very important, which is what are the words we're using and what are the image we're going to put to those words. And I don't have the answer specifically, but I know we think about it a lot. And I think that's going to be a very, very powerful way to think as we move forward in this world of video and marketing and advertising.
But I think the thing that we can leverage right now as a brand is 40 people on a Zoom call, right? Like, people are engaged with digital, people are at their homes more, they're sitting. And you can use this as a good time to curate more ideas and challenge your team to say, like, hey, if you hear an interesting customer success story, et cetera, let's make sure that our marketing team, our internal HR team maybe hears about it, and our marketing team hears about it. And maybe we can record a call and capture some of these stories. And right now, maybe we edit something with the Zoom footage, and then down the road, we say, wow, of all the 50 stories we captured in the last 3 months, this one was incredible. We heard from a client who is in the health insurance space, and one of their customers, their parent had a heart attack, had to get in an ambulance and ride. And they reached out to the insurance broker and said, you guys made this so easy for me that I didn't have to worry about certain things. That's a story that you put in your back pocket and you say, that represents our brand. That represents our culture. That's why we're doing what we're doing. That's the why. And if you curate enough of those stories now and after COVID, obviously, you keep up that curation, you're going to produce better content that makes those words that you choose even louder and more meaningful. So I think that's really what it's all about, is what we just said. If you're going to choose buzzwords, at least make them your own and add some flair to them. And to make that flair and those buzzwords really mean something, share the stories that are tied to those buzzwords, and make sure you're curating and capturing as much content as you can right now to find those stories.
So that'll do it for the Video Jungle podcast. Don't forget to 5-star us on any of the platforms that you're listening to us, because my producer Mark says that's a good idea. Leave us some reviews. And more importantly, I want everybody to find their courage to produce all of your content with courage, passion, and soul.
This has been the Video Jungle podcast. Find your fascinating, a product of Animus Studios.